So the 90s, this was also a shift in just the economic makeup and the political makeup, because the US was also in the process of warming up with mainland China. This was like still
Yes.
the honeymoon phase,
Yes.
except
Yes.
for a brief period in 1989.
Yep. I mean, before the Tiananmen protest, I remember, even in China, they write glowing reports about Reagan's visit to China or the Bush's visit to China. Like, there's entire page of editorial devoted to like flying tigers and the U.S. help to China during World War II. I was born in that era in 1980s when like U.S. couldn't do anything wrong. Basically, U.S. is like this perfect God sent country, right? Like China's best friend. That was 1980s. Yeah.
It's kind of like Vietnam today, in regards to the US.
Yeah, very similar situation because in 1980s, U.S. was playing China off against Soviet Union.
Yes.
U.S. was playing the China cards to force like Soviet to come to some kind of concession. Whereas right now, U.S. is trying to play off Vietnam against China because they understand there's some historical animosity between the two nations. So they try and also they understand that Vietnamese leader probably also wanted to balance versus over reliance on China. So there's yeah. So I can understand why that is. It's very similar.
Yeah. So then I want to tie this all together. So Lee Tenghui, part of his appeal to the masses in Taiwan was that he's the first Taiwanese leader of Taiwan,
Mm-hmm.
right? And but then he was also not for independence. He was like his speeches, even his 1996 inauguration. So 1996 was the first year in Taiwan that the leader was directly elected by the people. Before, it was still
Yeah.
done through the National Assembly. Even Lee Tenghui's like second and third terms were done that way. So Lee Tenghui was leader for 12 years total.
Yeah.
He could have actually been leader for 16 years if he pursued a second term, because like the whole two-term limit didn't start
Mm.
counting until 1996.
Ah.
So he only served one out of two terms that he could, like, since then. And if you look at the debates from 1996, the major opponent to him was Peng Mingmin, who was running on
Mm.
the DPP ticket.
Mm.
Yes, and Peng
And
Mingmin.
and DPP, at least back then, is explicitly party for Taiwanese independence, and Peng Mingmin is like the godfather of the independence movement.
Yes. Well, the DPP didn't necessarily start out that way, but by 1996 that was the
Yeah.
case. In the
Yep.
80s, when they elected their first party chairman, there one of the members, the guy who lost by one vote was actually a 外省人 who was not
Mm.
really pro independence.
Yeah.
It was just it was just opposition to the KMT. But then
Right.
when you have a liberal democracy, I mean, both parties are for the status quo. Both parties are for, they're not for fundamental change.
Yes.
Therefore, whatever gets them the most votes. So what do you have to do to differentiate yourself from the KMT? I think all that is left is identity politics.
Yep.
And there's a lot to play with identity politics in Taiwan, given the whole 外省本省 animosity as a result of the KMT's mishandling of many issues in the past. But there's also, if you want to subdivide it, even among like 本省人, there's the Hoklo, there's the Hakka, and then there's Aboriginal people, like over 10 different Aboriginal tribes.
Right.
If you really
But
want to
they're
play,
less than 2% of the population, right? The
Aboriginals
Aboriginal.
are 2% of the population. I want to read a passage from Chen Shui-bian's book. This is a little ahead of like later on, but this kind of
Yeah.
shows the attitudes of identity politics by the DPP. So he's saying, this was written in 2001. So saying, last year on the May 20th presidential inauguration, I invited 我特别邀请在演艺界有天后美誉的张惠妹小姐演唱国歌。So I invited the so-called queen in the entertainment sphere, Zhang Hui-mei, who was one of the most popular singers at the time, to come sing the national anthem, saying that 引起社会各界很大的回响。Getting a great response, generating a great response from all aspects of society, all whatever. You get the point. Basically, blah blah blah. The main point, 张惠妹唱国歌具有很多重要象征意义。Her singing the national anthem has many areas of significance. 她是女性 she's a woman. 她是原住民 she's Aboriginal. So saying that, so he's what I'm just gonna translate this like from Chinese to English to even more direct English. She is his token. She is his ID poll token.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the trajectory of the KMT. Now, shit, where are we? I feel like we're kind of jumping.
We're talking about identity politics
in Taiwan. Yes.
Yeah.
So Lee Tenghui kind of during the 90s, he was kind of just. This was when all of this became more relevant. In the past, it was all KMT, so it was just like whatever, all we had to do is just not get overthrown, and we're good. But now, Lee Tenghui, they're saying that. So Lee Tenghui ends like the ban on political parties, and then he invites all of these exiled separatists back to Taiwan, including Peng Minmin, and gets rid of their status as fugitives. Yes, and then but then all the while he's still saying he's against Taiwan independence.
Of course, because that was during Lee Tenghui era, the beginning of the Lee Tenghui era, like you mentioned, the idea of Taiwanese independence was like not that popular because most people in Taiwan are fine with status quo, right? Yeah. And there wasn't like a burning need to declare a Taiwan like a de jure Taiwanese independence.
Yeah, people still thought that they were just like, oh, whatever. Like we've been talking about reunification for so many decades, but nothing's happened. Whatever. We're just gonna put it on the back burner.
Yeah.
It's it's funny because I have some relatives who are DPP supporters, and one of them is my grandfather's sister. But then when my uncle, so my mom's younger brother, was a supporter of the DPP in the early 90s, she actually, so my grandfather's sister, so I guess my uncle's aunt, called him and just condemned him for supporting the DPP. But then she later became a DPP supporter.
Oh, okay.
It was just kind of like, it was kind of like the adult, conservative, why are you stirring shit up type of deal.
Yeah.
But then later he got disillusioned with the DPP.
Yeah.
So around this time in the 90s, very interesting time. So you have just Taiwan entering a post-industrial era, but it was still there was still an air of optimism because of the fall of the Soviet Union and the whole end of history and liberal democracy. This is the way. We don't want to be too left. We don't want to be too right. We want a pure, unadulterated democracy.
Yes.
That was.
And I also remember there was a talk at the time, also in Western media as well, as Taiwan is perfectly positioned to integrate itself with American tech economy, right? Because this was a time of a U.S. tech boom, started in 1995 to the tech bubble of 2000. So during that era, it was the line was, Taiwan is perfectly positioned to integrate with this American-led economy. It kind of that will basically propel Taiwan out from China's orbit, right? You'll be more closely embedded into the American alliance.
So 1995, the U.S. government and Congress allows Lee Tenghui to visit the U.S. on an unofficial trip, but he was still the leader of Taiwan, making him the first incumbent leader to visit the U.S. And this greatly boosted his popularity in Taiwan because remember, this was like after the U.S. had cut ties with the government in Taipei. So he gives a speech at Cornell, and he says that the ROC is on Taiwan. So this was, I don't know if this is like obvious to a lot of the listeners, but this was a pretty huge shift in official narrative coming from the government.
Yes.
Because in the past it was ROC encompasses all of China, and Taiwan is the free area and the base from where we will one day reclaim the mainland. It hasn't happened yet, but trust me, bro.
Yeah.
That was kind of...
Now, let me ask you a question. Now, do you think Lee Tenghui pushed for that new modified narrative because it's just a simple recognition of reality, or is it because Lee Tenghui always had an agenda that he's pushing for, which is to shape a different identity for Taiwan?
I think it was in trying to make everyone happy.
Okay.
At that time, because he's saying what his argument was back then was there's no need for Taiwan independence. He's saying the Republic of China is a sovereign and independent country.
Mm-hmm.
But then he wants to kind of appeal to some people who are kind of, lukewarm pro-independence. So he's saying, and the Republic of China is on Taiwan. So it's kind of interesting how the so-called Republic of China in the past was used by Chiang Kai-shek to mean like, oh, we're the real China. But nowadays it's ambiguous.
Yes.
It could be a placeholder for Taiwan when Taiwan can't be said to be a country.
Yeah.
And then so it's also how today, like the so-called ROC.
I noticed a shift, by the way, when I first came to US. I started 8th grade in US. I was in a ESL class. It was taught by like an older generation teacher from Taiwan, right? But in class with me was another a Taiwanese girl, same age as me. So our teacher, she's teaching American history, but she will always relate it back to the Chinese history. Like when she's teaching about American Civil War, she will make reference to the Chinese Civil War, right? And so it's very obvious her position is that it's a civil war, like the China and Taiwan is really one. There's no point to fight it to like for the brothers to fight each other. But the Taiwanese girl in our class, like she has her own ideas. She said like she's always insistent that Taiwan should be called Formosa, right, instead of Taiwan. She's like, I'm from Formosa.
This was when she was like your age, so she was like a teenager.
Yeah.
And this was in the early 90s. In the
90s. Early 90s.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and she always make a point that I'm Taiwanese. She'll make a point. I'm Taiwanese. I'm not from mainland China. Like, don't confuse me with like these other Chinese people. I'm Taiwanese. I'm from Formosa. Yeah.
So it was at the same speech that Lee Tenghui talked about his 3 no's: no reunification, no independence, and no use of military force. And this was essentially the situation of the Taiwan Strait by the time Jiang Jingguo came into power. But it's just back then the official rhetoric was still the pursuit of reunification. So now you see a shift from like active pursuit of reunification, even if it's just rhetoric, to sort of maintaining the status quo. Yep. And maintaining the status quo actually goes against the so-called ROC constitution, because the constitution says that we need to work for the reunification, even to this day, but I mean, it's not actively pursued. And maintaining the status quo is not pursuing reunification.
Yeah.
Because reunification is an active process, not something that's passive.
Right.
So this was basically an announcement that the Taiwan authorities are now seeking to maintain the status quo indefinitely. And it's really interesting because you see now you associate Lee Tenghui with people like Chen Shui-bian, right? Chen Shui-bian is the first DPP, the first leader of Taiwan from the DPP party, who was elected in 2000, which marked the first what is it transfer of power between two political parties in Taiwan.
Yep.
But interestingly enough, you know who Chen Shui-bian lost to in 1998 during the Taipei mayoral election?
Ma Ying-jeou.
And who supported Ma Ying-jeou?
Lee Tenghui.
Did you see the speech that I sent you?
Yes.
It was at a campaign rally, and Lee Tenghui asked. He was speaking Hokkien, so like it was back then. Earlier on, Lee Tenghui would speak Mandarin at public events. But then this time it was done in Hokkien or Taiwanese Hokkien. And he asked Ma Ying-jeou, Li Xi or Ma Ying-jeou, like, where are you from? Or like, where are you, or what's your origins? And Ma Ying-jeou said in his broken Hokkien, 我吃台湾米，飲台灣水，我是新台灣人。I eat Taiwanese rice. I drink Taiwanese water. I am a new Taiwanese. And then Li Tenghui gave a little speech about how that this is a new era where Bensheng and Waisheng don't make a difference. We're all Taiwanese, and you're all like, so now you should vote. So I'm asking you guys to please support our Ma Ying-jeou. And then in 2000, when Chen Shui-bian was the so it was pretty interesting in 2000 because the blue camp was split because, as we mentioned, there was a sort of faction, there was a split of various factions in the KMT. So then you had Song Chuyu, and then you had Lian Zhan. Both Song Chuyu used to be in the KMT, but he left the KMT to form his new party.
Yeah.
And then it was Qinmindang. Yes, there was and then there was Lian Zhan. Lian Zhan was a candidate in the KMT. Lian Zhan's an interesting character because he's a Benshengren, but he was born in the mainland. Yeah. So I think that was kind of a choice to just kind of make everyone happy. Make both the Waisheng and Bensheng happy. You know, it's like, hey, I'm a Bensheng, but then you can tell the Waisheng, well, see, I was born in I was born in the mainland.
Wait, so is he born in Fujian?
No. Oh. No, his dad is Taiwanese, but his dad was in the mainland and then he was born there.
Okay.
Yeah. He did spend his childhood in the mainland. Remember when he first made his visit to the mainland in the 2000s, and he went to visit his the elementary school he attended. And the little kids were like, 连爷爷，您回来了，您终于回来了，这里曾经是您的母校，爷爷啊爷爷。That became a popular ringtone in Taiwan, by the way, during that time.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Oh god! I mean, like, it's always funny when like nowadays, like, to hear these kind of, you know, Mandarin, right? Like really standard Mandarin speaking. So it just, because just even the time when I was growing up on mainland, it's not a thing. It's like in school
nobody spoke like proper Mandarin except for like people in certain areas.
Yeah, in my school, everybody spoke Sichuanese. You know, the only time we spoke standard Mandarin is in class when like the teacher is teaching, right? We're supposed to respond in standard Mandarin to teacher's question. But even so, we have a math teacher. She taught in Sichuanese the whole time, you know, like she didn't care. But so like the only time we would speak standard Mandarin outside of class is if somebody is from different part of China. And
but you still don't speak it like that properly.
No, no.
Yeah.
There's no way we're gonna say nin. I mean, like I never hear anybody say nin except like on TV or maybe like nowadays if you go to China, like some service sector, some service people will say that. But
It's kind of like how somebody in the U.S. and like community who's is there did it stop recording?
no, no. It's still recording. I think it just
Okay.
fade. You just fade out a little bit.
It's
Probably
kind of
because
like somebody who like grew up in the black community who speaks AAVE like on a day-to-day basis. Like they would speak like standard English in certain like parts of their lives. But then like
Mhm.
they're not gonna go like when they go out with their friends, they're not going to be like, I will use my credit card. You know? It's kind of like yeah.
Yeah.
Basically Lian Zhan was kind of groomed by Lee Tenghui as the candidate for the KMT. But then Chen Shui-bian was also widely popular. So then Li Tenghui just kind of like he kind of went through the motions of supporting Lian Zhan, but then also kind of tried to appeal to Chen Shui-bian and his supporters. So you can see a theme of like Li Tenghui was just trying to shape kind of the Taiwan's political atmosphere.
Yeah, so that's where I have my question, right? Like, so Li Tenghui is obviously a opportunist during his career, as a politician in Taiwan. He bends to whichever the political wind is blowing. But why do you think that after he retired from the political scene, why did he use his influence kind of sway toward like the independence side of things? Why do you think that is?
Well, one of them was he was kicked out of the KMT.
Oh, well, that's true. But why did he get kicked out again?
Because Lian Zhan lost the elections and people in the KMT were upset. They thought that Li Tenghui kind of just kind of used his influence to sway elections
Yeah,
a certain way.
right. So yeah. Then my question is, why did Li Tenghui try to appeal to Chen Shui-bian, trying to help Chen Shui-bian?
I think he just saw the new trends forming in Taiwan's politics, in Taiwan's political arena.
Mm. But he was already retired, right? He was already retired from the political scene. Why
No,
did
and
he?
no, around that time he was still the chairman of the KMT and the leader of Taiwan. The elections happened in 2000 when Chen Shui-bian
Oh, oh,
the first term.
oh. So this is the election to elect his own successor, right? Right. Okay.
Lian Zhan, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, exactly. So the question is why, rather than pulling his support for the enzyme, the guy from his own party, who is also Benson, then why support Chen Shui-bian then?
No, I think, like I said, Lian Zhan was kind of groomed to be a successor
Yeah.
in a certain way, but then he saw that it was like Chen Shui-bian was more popular because Lian Zhan was less popular than Song Chu-yu.
Yeah. Lian Zhan is not a very charismatic person. I mean, this guy is like a wood, right?
Yeah,
It's like he looked like one too. And then
he could have won by a small margin in 2004.
if the KMT vote, if the Pan Blue vote wasn't split.
No, 2004 it wasn't split. Song Chu-yu was his running mate. In 2000 it was split.
Oh right. Oh yeah. Okay.
2004 was the bullet incident.
Yes. Yes. I mean, what can I say? Chen Shui-bian have some of the best natural acting skills ever.
It's the especially. Did you see the two videos I sent on Chen Shui-bian's scandal? It was done by CCTV. It's shot. It was edited with music, and it just felt like watching a drama, like a detective drama.
But so I mean, are you saying Li Tenghui is supporting Chen Shui-bian just because he's? I mean, what do you think his motivation is though? I mean, is it just to shore up his own political legacy? Because he's going to be retired soon.
But even after he retired, he was still in the background influencing politics. I mean, look at Tsai Ing-wen. Tsai Ing-wen worked in the Mainland Affairs Council when Lee Tenghui was leader.
Mm.
His whole
So
yes,
Tsai Ing-wen is another one of those Benson elite that worked through the KMT bureaucracy, just like Lee Tenghui, right?
yeah, she was part of the Mainland Affairs Council, and for those who don't know, because I mean, the government on Taiwan doesn't recognize mainland China as a country. It needs a separate like governmental bureau to handle affairs related to mainland China, kind of like how mainland China has 国台办.
Yeah.
What's it called in English?
So it's like the liaison office for
Taiwan affairs.
Taiwan affair, yeah.
Yeah.
But remember, Lee Tenghui is also he was responsible for the '92 consensus. You know, when Taiwan KMT sent a delegation to secretly meet with a delegation from mainland China
In Hong Kong.
to discuss Taiwan's future in Singapore. You know, they did that, right?
That was in Singapore. I thought it was Hong Kong.
Oh, I have to go look up. I mean, maybe multiple meetings, Hong Kong and Singapore. I don't remember. But you know, the whole '92 consensus was that you know, my understanding is that Taiwan will not declare independence, right?
1992 consensus is there's going to be disagreements on whether China is the Republic of China or the People's Republic of China. And what we're going to do is we're going to work with the understanding that there's one China and that on the two sides of the strait, we're going to interpret one China differently, but we're still agreeing that there's one China. Basically, it's a formalization of like the Chiang Kai-shek era between Chiang and Mao.
Yeah.
But then it's kind of a consensus without a consensus. It's just a masterpiece of ambiguity.
Yeah, it's agree to disagree. But I mean, overall, it's like agreement to kind of preserve the status quo for now.
Yes. And then Tsai Ing-wen didn't join the DPP until 2004. So she's one of Lee Tenghui's groomed proteges who was injected into the DPP.
Oh my goodness.
So I think the point is I think Lee Tenghui is just kind of setting up the stage for liberal democracies. Like no matter how you vote, you're voting for the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Lee Tenghui was always, you know, he was pro-capitalist, even though he was he used to be a communist for like a year.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the scandals between him and Zhang Rongfa, the CEO of EVA Airlines, and stuff. There's so lot of there's just so lot there's so much of that sort of collusion between like him and capitalists, like capitalists and his government.
Yeah, he's wasn't the owl that called Lee Tenghui like the father of Taiwan's 黑金政治, like the black gold politics, the corruption, right?
He might have.
Okay. But I think he was talking about the allegation that Lee Tenghui was using basically using money to influence vote.
Oh, he definitely was.
Yeah.
So it's pretty laughable that it's and unscientific to credit him for the democratization of Taiwan, because that was what the trends were. It's kind of like even if Lenin were never born, right? Somebody else would have existed to fill his role given the situation Russia was in during that time period. It's kind of like what's it's like the chicken and egg thing. It's like I don't think it's really scientific. It's like the great man theory. Like whether you're a Lee Tenghui supporter or detractor, we shouldn't. Yeah,
I think it's obvious that Lee Tenghui is not the man who made history. He is the man who read the historical trend, who he saw which way the wind is blowing, and then he bent to that side. I think that's pretty clear from Lee Tenghui's political career.
Yes. Also, at the end of his term, his presidency, his leadership, he had a interview with, I think, German media. And he said that was the first time he said the relationship between Taiwan and mainland China is a relationship between two countries. At least it's a sort of special relationship between two countries. And yeah, Tsai Ing-wen also helped was one of the people who helped draft the whole theory of two states.
Mm.
So I think the whole departure from one China is kind of an adaptation to a new kind of international arena when it comes to global politics. Because what's he preserving? I think there's more preservation than change. Changes are okay, the total liberalization of Taiwan. You had these sort of like these like state supported like credit unions or whatever being dissolved, like Fubang Bank in Taipei used to be Taipei Yinhang, which was run by the city, and then it became sold off to the Fubang Jituan. It's a conglomerate in Taiwan. When Ma Ying-jeou was mayor, and Ma Ying-jeou was mayor when Lee Tenghui was the party chairman of the KMT.
But what do you think is Lee Tenghui's guiding ideology, though? Do you think it's just liberalism?
Yeah, I think it's liberalism and opportunism, and just capitalism. I mean, what hasn't changed in Taiwan though? It's in global politics. I think what's most important about Taiwan is its geographic location and its geopolitics. It's part of the first island chain, right?
Yep.
And why did the U.S. Conquer Hawaii? It wanted to shift its defense line on the east from California out to the Pacific Ocean, right? And then it got Guam, and then it got the first island chain, the second island chain. Now it's like it's got bases. It's like Okinawa, Japan, like South Korea. It doesn't have military bases in Taiwan, but it wants to have a U.S. leaning government there.
Well, what actually brought U.S. to the Pacific is actually China trade. Like China trade was what saved United States economically after the War of Independence, and in the process of this expanding China trade, U.S. Merchants were stopping in Hawaii. They pillaged the sandalwood forests of Hawaii to chop them down and ship them to China. And then in the process, like the U.S. business interests start taking roots in Hawaii, eventually led them to stage the coup to overthrow the Kingdom of Hawaii and annex it to the United States. And same thing with the U.S. American-Spanish War, that Spanish-American War that led U.S. to take over Philippines, a Spanish colony, because U.S. wanted Philippines as a stepping stone to the China market, because U.S. was relatively late to the colonial game into the Far East. British Empire and the French, they got here first. So that's why U.S. demanded the open door policy to China. And that's why Commodore Perry went to Japan to demand Japan to open its door, because, Japan remained to be the last market, right, to be unopened. The China was already opened by the British. So U.S. went to the Japan. U.S. went to the Kingdom of Ryukyu or Kingdom of Ryukyu, Okinawa, right? Force these countries to open. That's what brought U.S. to East Asia, is to engage the China trade and to profit from it, right? But right now Taiwan is they openly call Taiwan the unsinkable aircraft carrier, right? U.S. unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Western Pacific. You can't get more explicit than that. In fact, there's some talks within the White House. I heard through the grapevines, right? There's discussion in the White House between National Security Advisor of Trump. I'm talking about, Matt Pottinger and Pompeo. Right now, they're talking about possibility of basing U.S. troops again in Taiwan. That was a thing before like 1960s. U.S. had stationed troops in Taiwan in the aftermath of Korean War. But in 1972, as a result of Nixon's visit to China, U.S. withdrew from Taiwan. U.S. withdrew its military, and now Pottinger and Pompeo are talking about bringing back U.S. base in Taiwan as basically a fuck you to China. The idea is that China did not respond forcefully after U.S. banned Huawei and TikTok, and now we're going to stick to them geopolitically by recognizing Taiwan's status. If China failed to respond, then that's somehow U.S. show its resolve, and they talk about that as what's going to prompt Trump to the next election victory.
I have an answer for your question now.
Okay, go ahead.
I think Lee Tenghui realized that the existing Chinese nationalism that existed in Taiwan, the logical conclusion of that would be Chinese reunification.
Yes.
And I think the logical conclusion of the of everything, all of the ideology existing in Taiwan, except for the Chinese nationalism, the logical conclusion would have been either two Chinas or one China, one Taiwan.
Yeah.
And one China, one Taiwan, and or two Chinas, either one. I mean, there's some differences. I mean, two Chinas would be like, okay, we still recognize ourselves as Chinese, but we're this China and not that China. And this is what the separatists are against.
Mm-hmm.
The separatists just want, okay, like fuck China, we just want to let Taiwan be Taiwan.
Yeah.
Like we want to just get rid of Chinese influence in Taiwan, but somehow still speak Hokkien. And I don't know how all of that works, but it.
But people. There are people in Taiwan. You told me there are people in Taiwan. They thought Hokkien is like a language native to Taiwan.
There are some people who aren't aware of its origins, yes, but I wouldn't call them the majority. I think a lot of people, if they don't know, they just don't really think about it, but they don't. Yeah. So what's consistent? What hasn't changed is Lee Tenghui's relationship, maintaining the relationship between Taiwan and the U.S.
Yes.
And what has Taiwan always been? It's been the front line of the Cold War. Now the Cold War is over, so which made the 90s kind of an interesting era, right? With strengthening, and I think back then Lee Tenghui wasn't necessarily pro Taiwan independence, because he was also kind of a subscriber to the whole what is it? 中国崩溃论.
Yes,
the theory of China's inevitable fall, and that it'll split, that it might even split into 6 or 7 countries.
Yeah.
So I think part of being against Taiwan independence at that point was, if that were to happen, whose government would be able to lead all of China? Lee Tenghui's government. Or the government of his successors. Right? And as that seemed unlikely, then what's left?
Republic of China and Taiwan.
Basically. So then I think in order to gain support from the from voters, you can't just be too direct with these things. Hey, I want Taiwan to remain kind of the watchdog for the US. You got to package it. I think identity politics, I think I don't like it when people say, oh, identity politics is good or bad. Identity politics has always been the packaging of like class politics, and it's deeper politics, but it's just the packaging that it's the coating on the pill that makes it easier for the masses to swallow. Whether it's reactionary politics or revolutionary politics. Are you satisfied with this answer to your question?
Yeah, I am. So now that Lee Tenghui is dead, what do you think his legacy? What is his political legacy in Taiwan?
The full liberalization of Taiwan.
Okay, but I do feel like I mean, in a way, Tsai Ing-wen administration is his legacy, right? Because Tsai Ing-wen is the person he groomed, like Tsai Ing-wen did just like Lee Tenghui because Tsai Ing-wen also was worked her way up the KMT bureaucracy. She was never part of the kind of resistance to the KMT movement until KMT kind of fall sideways, and it was just DPP become mainstream enough where she could just switch the party affiliation.
I think then now that you say this, I have an answer to that question as well. His political legacy is because you bring up Tsai Ing-wen and DPP is it became part of Taiwan's culture, political culture, to for the government to co-opt various movements among the people. For example, the latest example I can think of is LGBT rights.
Yes.
I'm all for gay rights and all that stuff, but then you have to question, like, why is Tsai Ing-wen all of a sudden being that supportive? Because I mean, I think given the past just the past decade or two, the KMT is in a position where it's afraid to be bold. It doesn't want to change. It's just, okay, what do I do? Because no matter what I do, people are going to be pissed. The best thing is just to lay low.
Yes.
And this opens up the door for the DPP to just be like, okay, we're for gay marriage, we're for this, and then whatever the KMT is for, we're going to be against. So the KMT is for free trade with mainland China. So you know what? Free trade is not free, and it's bad. But then free trade with other countries is good.
Yeah.
At least so the KMT at this point is the party of consistency. I mean, it's consistently bad, but it's consistent.
Yes.
Now, so it's like you have like neutral bad, and you have like neutral evil and chaotic evil. That's the political legacy that Lee Tenghui left Taiwan with. I think we just had to bounce some ideas back and forth before I could put all these ideas into words.
Yes. I buy that. Neutral evil and chaotic evil. So what do you see, for Taiwan's political future? Looking for. I mean, right now, because we're talking about all that, Lee Tenghui positioned himself like at the end of the first Cold War, right? And right now, we are entering a period of a new Cold War, a Cold War that U.S. has started against China. And now Taiwan is again at the forefront because we just have the health secretary of Trump, Alex Azar, in Taiwan. Like, he's the highest, U.S. official visiting Taiwan since forever. And before through grapevine, I heard his trip is kind of like they're testing the waters for for possible U.S. recognition of Taiwan, and that's my puppies, and so definitely we don't know if that's actually gonna go through with it, but definitely now Taiwan again became the focal point as the front line of the new Cold War. So what do you see? Taiwan's political future going forward.
Coinciding with the Cold War in Taiwan is the sort of, like I said, Taiwan has entered its post-industrial phase. It's facing the same late capitalism problems that the U.S. is facing. There's the youth there are very pessimistic about their futures, and not just politics, but like their job prospects, and like it's becoming increasingly unaffordable to own a house or to raise a family, and the population is people aren't having that many kids, so the population is being old, and then like who's gonna be supporting these older retirees that outnumber the younger people? I mean, these are all problems that will result in, hopefully, there's going to be rising leftist sentiments in Taiwan, right? That's one side of the coin, but at the same time there's going to be rising fascism. We already see that. And then the other interesting thing is, because of the CIA's cultural programs in the past, they had this sort of pseudo left that is against capitalism, but not for anything that can resolve things, that can resolve the contradictions of capitalism. And then at the end of the day, they serve U.S. interests. It's kind of like how the law in the United States or any bourgeois democracy says that everyone is equal before the law. But then when you say that, you're effectively siding with the rich and powerful.
Yes.
Like I'm on
Yes.
neither
I mean,
people's
right
side.
now, during the first Cold War, there was supposedly the third position, right? Neither Washington nor Moscow, and now
But
people
actually, Washington.
are just yeah. Now people are just reposition that and saying neither Beijing nor Washington. But what they're really saying is, by not choosing to take side in this Cold War perpetuated by U.S., they're in essence they're siding with the continuation of the U.S. hegemony.
Yes, and that's I think years of ideological training in Taiwan by the Changs, by Lee Tenghui, by Chen Shui-bian. It's things are looking bad for Taiwan in this regard. I think the problem, the most dangerous thing about the political atmosphere in Taiwan today that I see is that there's a lot of crypto fascism, right? Populism and stuff. But the thing is, these people don't realize they're fascist. Many of them actually think they're leftists. Taiwan is an interesting case with just given its history where you can have progressive values like being in support for gay rights, and then having that like also just peacefully coexist with the most reactionary forms of populism. So it's like this sort of, whereas in the US, like fascism is more, it tends to be more just outright reactionary, like white supremacy, like we want to go back to the sort of traditions. We don't like gay people. We don't like, it takes on that form in the US, but in Taiwan it's kind of, so I feel the KMT in many ways is becoming kind of irrelevant. Not that it's irrelevant, but it's not really steering the narrative. Like I said, like right now they're in a position where they're too afraid to do anything because they had their asses kicked all over. I mean, why did Ma Ying-jeou win in 2008? It wasn't because the KMT was like that amazing. It was just because Chen Shui-bian was too much of a disappointment.
Yes. That's why I was really surprised that Tsai Ing-wen came back from behind to snatch this election victory because her approval rating was so low going into the election. But I think
Hong
she
Kong
was saved.
protests.
Yes, she was saved by the Hong Kong protests. I mean, that kind of helped the DPP to whip up the scare of mainland China. And then again play into the identity politics and then make people vote for DPP. That tactic worked time and time again. But like we both have talked about before, that I'm glad that Tsai Ing-wen won the election because I don't see the Taiwan's economic position improving anytime soon, and all the problems has built up in the first Tsai Ing-wen turn. It's not going to be resolved by the second Tsai Ing-wen turn, and this time they will have nobody to blame but themselves, DPP. Well, I'm pretty sure they're trying to shift the blame to China somehow, but
Well, yeah.
hopefully people in Taiwan will be mature enough to see through that. Oh,
This takes
we can't
time
always live.
because there's so many decades of ideological conditioning that of a certain tendency. It's kind of, so like even like opposition to the KMT, like the true left opposition was crushed. So you had like petty bourgeois. Like if you look at activist circles in Taiwan, like the people who were behind like the sunflower movement and stuff, they were all like, I mean, I'm not saying all the participants, but like everyone in the leadership role came from like the middle classes, and then like people like Lin Feifan got like got profited from that politically profited from that whole incident. Lin Feifan is now a member of the DPP with pretty high position, and then you have like the new power party forming, and the new power party is kind of like a Maidan-esque political party, kind of like it's kind of like the Color Revolution party basically. It's headed, and before Freddie Lim, Lin Changzuo was in it, but then he quit because personal differences. And then like in an interview in the past, he was like, when we campaigned, we didn't really talk about left or right because that stuff's not important. If we talk about things like, oh, we're for workers' rights and we're for this and that, then saying whether you're left or right just becomes superfluous. And I think that's just a way of dodging the question and saying, like, it's basically the color revolutionary playbook.
Yeah, I think one of the things that CIA and associated U.S. intelligence agency were able to do very successfully after Cold War is to adopt all the leftist rhetorics, right? And then to
Channel
apply
it
that
towards imperialism.
Yeah, and apply that to their enemies, apply to the governments that's unfriendly to United States interests. I mean, now I see people on Twitter calling China a settler colonial a colonial settler state.
Like,
I
okay,
didn't even I mean I don't even know what to respond to
this
that.
is the thing. This is the thing. Like, the argument can be made that China is like revisionist or capitalist or whatever, but then where the fuck do you get settler colonial state from?
It's like, yes, the Chinese people are actually aliens that came from outer space.
But then they'll talk
Just-
about they'll talk about things like, oh, Tibet and Xinjiang, but then it's not a matter of just Han Chinese people waking up one day and saying, hey, we're gonna go conquer Tibet. We've had thousands of years of interaction, peaceful interaction and non-peaceful interaction. Like, shit started by both sides, and it's a natural expansion. It's not like going just to a new continent and like committing genocide and then taking over the land. No, it's not. That's not how it happened.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a lot of the talking points from the West about China is really projection, right? I mean,
Yes.
all the U.S. intelligence agency complain about the surveillance state in China. It's because they're doing it. They're reading our emails because that's what they do. They naturally assume, China must be doing the same thing, and again, it's like all the talk about genocide and suppression of minorities, concentration camp. These are all the things that U.S. is doing either in the past or currently. We have concentration camp on the borders right now. We're
Or the
locking
other
up
one, the what they're saying now with the Uyghurs is they're what is it? They're I'm like forgetting English for some reason.
You can talk Chinese to me.
Forced what is it?
Are you talking about the forced labor?
No, not forced labor. The like
the forced sterilization.
Sterilization. Yes, that's the word. That's sterilization.
And
that's actually stuff that why are birth control pills so effective? Because the U.S. used to use like indigenous and black people as lab rats without telling them what they were taking.
Yes, and it's even more horrifying than that. U.S. is the one that actually, they had conducted venereal disease test on black and brown people, and without telling them, like and not both within United States on black people and also in global South nations like Guatemala, right? Infecting people with venereal disease and meting out different dosage or treatments to see what happens. Literally human experimentation.
Yes, but then and the thing is, in Taiwan, I think in the U.S. we get to see these things more often because we're in this country and like people talk about it. But then the thing is, and we know English, so then we have access to this sorts of information. But then in Taiwan, the way information is controlled is, yes, there is freedom of press, but then if you look at the publication houses, what kind of stuff gets translated?
Yeah, U.S. State media. I mean, U.S. mainstream media.
Yes, I mean, and then like when I was at the airport, I saw so many books of copies of Park Yeon-mi's book, the crying North Korean defector.
Yeah, oh my God. I first saw her testimony shared on Facebook by one of my high school friend, right? She's like, oh my God, how can this thing be happening? And so I started watching, and I couldn't go through with it because I'm like, this is so obviously fake.
It's Naira's testimony all over again from the Kuwait, the invasion of Kuwait.
Yes. For people who don't know, this is leading up to the Gulf War. They had a teenage girl to testify before Congress about the evil Iraqi soldier tossing innocent Kuwaiti babies from incubators, and that helped to sell the war. And of course, that teenager crying on the witness stand is none other than the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador. I mean, we only find out this much years later, after the war already happened, after, like the highway of death, right? When CNN, etc., like celebrated
in the new Call of Duty game, I think it was Call of Duty, they presented the highway of death theme, but then they were like, it's the Russians that did it.
It's a projection all over again, Yeah. It's always Go ahead.
This is also another one of Lee Tenghui's legacies in Taiwan. It's like, yes, under Jiang Jieshi and Jiang Jingguo, I mean, there was a lot of just anti-communist propaganda. But then this sort of like the new like pseudo left type of pseudo left imperialism wasn't really a thing in Taiwan. It was, people just didn't pretend to care about human rights.
Yeah,
they were too worried about like stuff that was actually happening in Taiwan, the actual repressions. So I think the DPP has the KMT to thank. In one regards is the real left, the KMT did all the dirty work for them. They killed off all the communists and the actual meaningful, like the people who could have formed a meaningful opposition to all of this new sort of the new status quo, and giving them a playground. And also my friend, the one that I was talking about, who I suggested to your show, and he was also for his job, like last year or 2 years ago, he was talking to these people who had actually been locked up by the investigation bureau in Taiwan, and they were anti-KMT, but they were communists, or they had contacts with communists. And then they're really mad that the TPP nowadays is painting them all as Taiwanese independence heroes, because they were like it was the 70s. We didn't really care about Taiwan independence. We were like pro-communists. We all of the Taiwanese independence people that you see now were abroad in Japan or the US.
Yeah,
and they didn't come back until the 90s.
I was actually surprised. I think I watched like a DPP friendly Taiwanese TV channel doing the documentation on the February 28th incident on Taiwan, and they actually covered Tsai Xuehong, the leader of the Taiwanese Communist Party, but they all, of course, presented her as like the fighter for the native Taiwanese rights. Right, they go from that angle. Okay, that's Lee Tenghui and Chen Shui-bian shaking hands. Is that after Chen Shui-bian's election?
Yes, it was on the it was after the election, before the inauguration. And the top is Zhang Hui-mei singing the national anthem.
She was blacklisted on mainland China for a couple of years because of that. Which I felt bad for her, because no joke. Jesus.
You see the Korean one. The Korean one says 국민당 반세기 통지 종지 国民党半世纪统治终止。End of the half century of KMT rule.
KMT rule. Yeah.
I think so this is kind of Lee Tenghui's legacy did set the stage for Chen Shui-bian, and also, like I said before in our previous podcast episode. Yes.
But the funny thing about the DPP rule is that before they come into power, DPP was always fielded independence as one of their major platforms. But none of the DPP president, neither Chen Shui-bian nor Tsai Ing-wen, has actually done anything about
Oh, dude.
independence.
Funny point. Now that you remind me, when Chen Shui-bian was the leader, Li Tenghui actually criticized him
For what?
for not being pro-independence enough.
Ah,
And
yes.
it's like you were leader for 12 years. Like, who are you to talk? What Chen Shui-bian did was add like the word Taiwan in English on the passport.
Yeah.
Before it just said in Chinese and English Republic of China.
Yeah.
Chen Shui-bian added Taiwan to the bottom, and then he did some things like I mentioned, like changing the Chinese Petroleum Company to Taiwan Central Petroleum Company.
Yeah.
And also changing Zhonghua Post, or China, or translated into English would be like China Post, into Taiwan Youzheng, Taiwan Post, which was then changed back to Zhonghua Youzheng. And then he changed just, it's very cosmetic. It's like somebody can get plastic surgery, but they're the same person.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's like the essence of a lot
PPP.
of the identity politics, right? They use identity
It's a
politics
release
to get
valve.
votes. Yeah, to get votes. And the reason they do that because it's a lot easier to play identity politics, to do cosmetic things than to actual do what's needed, like the needed reform in either political structure or the society, because that really takes work, that takes commitment.
Peng Mingmin's criticism of Li Tenghui in the debate was saying that he was a running dog for the KMT. Interestingly enough, the KMT reached out to Peng Mingmin and wanted him to like join their ranks before they reached out to Li Tenghui, but Peng Mingmin refused, saying that he could not be a sellout. But then after Li Tenghui left office, right? Peng Mingmin and Li Tenghui in public, they became like kind of. Peng Mingmin started publicly speaking positively of Li Tenghui. So are you admitting that you were wrong by not being a sellout and working from within climbing your way up the KMT ladder and hierarchy and changing things from within, or what is it? I mean, I think the way we break it down, we kind of explain why these things happened and where there are consistencies behind cosmetic and outward inconsistencies. But then the thing is, they're not admitting it themselves. So I think there's a lot of room for confusion. And then also, like I mentioned, the new Lin Changzuo, right? Freddie Lim.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about the political environment. Guess where he used to work?
Where?
Amnesty International.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I mean, that makes so much sense. There's a lot. I see that. I mean, that not just in Taiwan, but all across the world now.
Lin Changzuo killed Fred Hampton. Okay, not really. One of the co-founders of Amnesty International ratted Fred Hampton out to the FBI and was instrumental in getting Fred Hampton killed by the police.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, by extension, if Bernie killed Rosa Luxemburg, then Freddie Lim killed Fred Hampton.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of, like, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. I mean, Human Rights Watch is worse. Is worse than Amnesty International.
They're all NED.
Yeah, but they're all like in the human rights industry, right?
Yes,
they
all, I like the way it's worded, human rights industry.
Yeah, and they all have, like I have, before I tend to give my benefit of the doubt. I'm like, okay, Human Rights Watch is obviously a CIA cutout, but Amnesty International, maybe they're still different. And then I watch them in their involvement in Syrian war, in Ukraine, and then I'm like, oh man, this is like this is not just like a China thing. This is like a global thing that they have always been involved in the regime change operations
and killing like liberation figures in the U.S. I mean, you never see them like fighting for Asada Shakur, who is still in exile in Cuba. Do you? No. My friends in Taiwan like to call Amnesty International because Amnesty, the Chinese name for Amnesty International is 国际特赦组织.
Mm-hmm.
And the way, I mean, mainlanders call the characters hold on, what is it? You guys say you guys say 垃圾, we say 垃圾.
Yeah.
So we speak so we call it 国际垃圾组织, which is like
the international trash organization. That's good. Yeah.
国际垃圾组织. I guess it doesn't translate over into the mainland because the same characters are read 垃圾, 国际垃圾. It doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
Yeah.
So are you satisfied with this, or is there anything else you want to add, or anything?
I mean, we done an extensive job. I actually want to ask you, when are you going to invite your friend so we can talk about development of hip hop?
I think after we're almost done with the Taiwan series.
Okay.
I just want to get that out of the way first. He has his whole he has his master's thesis. I just want to go through that because there was on Instagram TV, he was giving a talk about how imperialism plays into the spread of culture and like the co-op of hip hop, and how like you can't look at hip hop or any culture in a vacuum, but you need to connect it to like the political economy and stuff like that. Sure. And then and then talking about how Chinese hip hop formed is, I mean, Chinese hip hop did have its origins in Taiwan and Hong Kong.
Okay.
And I don't think that's
Can we also comment on K-pop? we in our not this show.
I know. I think he'll kind of get into it because it's a related topic, because like if you get into like who's like the producers and who's doing what and the whole like cultural export and all that stuff, it's all part of the same assembly line, global assembly line, if you will. Yes. So it'll definitely be brought up. I don't think it'll be like a whole extensive discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll definitely be brought up.
I'm just really interested to talk about the development of hip hop in Chinese language sphere in the greater China area,
especially now with rap in China, 中国新说唱.
Yes, and you know, like a lot of the good rappers are from my neck of woods, from Sichuan, from Chongqing, right? Like
老大就是最有气场，老大就是风的倜傥。我想在跑车里，想要一辆法拉利，想要钱人民币。
Okay, you will do a performance on our next show, okay?
I will.
And you will be recorded. Okay, so I think we're coming up to almost 2.5 hours mark. It's a good point to stop. I'm gonna stop the recording right now. So thank you very much, Xiangyu, for coming to the show.
No problem. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and we will have you back for two things. We need to finish our Taiwan series. We're already on mid 2000, so we just have another 20 years to go to
I think we actually covered a lot of the stuff that will be covered in the future episodes.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean we can we still haven't really got to talk about Tsai Ing-wen, right? That's and the present. We haven't even got to talk about the difference between Ma Ying-jeou and then Tsai. So there's still plenty of things to talk about. And then we need to we said we're gonna start. You are gonna invite your friend. We're gonna talk about development of Chinese hip hop in the global context, and we have a series plan by your suggestion. Is we're gonna talk about the Korean War in the Chinese context, from the Chinese perspective. Where did you get that?
Gotta put on this hat I got in North Korea in the DPRK.
Nice. Okay, so that's a preview, everybody. That's a preview for our Korean War series. And thank you for tuning in. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Peace.